I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the business excellence guy, and of course, an author too, and the author of the book Dive In. No other than Mr. Rael Bricker.
Good morning.
Hello, Mr. Rael. Good morning, good
Morning.
afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, people. We're live on all social media, so please watch us and listen to our podcast wherever you listen your podcast. Book 101 review. So, Mr. Rael, can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Okay, I am a serial entrepreneur, been an entrepreneur for 30 plus years. I pride myself on the fact that I've only ever earned a salary for 3.5 years of my life. I In 2013, I had a life changing epiphany when I was training for a marathon and discovered I had two blocked arteries. And that made me refocus on what's important to me. And what was important to me was to share ideas with the world about how to run businesses, how to make business successful. And it was really my 30 years of learning since I was at business school. And so that was where Dive In first came from. I've written a few other ebooks since then, but the first published book was called Dive In, published in May 2018, and a new version of it coming out in 2026, still called Still Diving In.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Dive into the world, Mr. Royal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. And thank you. So tell us. Let's start with the title. What does it truly mean to dive in a
Okay.
business context? And
So,
how is it different mindset from the cautious, analytical approach often taught in a business school?
so it's a very practical approach. The back of the book says, the blurb on the back of the book says, business is not complicated, business is simple. You just have to dive in and adjust your course while you're moving. And so that's my philosophy. I get entrepreneurs coming to talk to me, and they tell me they've done 27 spreadsheets trying to work out whether to go into business. And I tell them they've done 26 spreadsheets too many, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to do that leap of faith to dive in. The story of the name actually comes from when I was doing triathlons in 2012. And I had done all my training in a swimming pool with a nice black line down the middle. And, no one kicking me in the head, and I wasn't kicking anyone else in the head. And then my very first triathlon, I was standing on a beach, and there were 100 other so called athletes standing with me. And as we ran into the water and dived in, we started kicking each other in the head, and I was being kicked in my head, and I was kicking people behind me, etc. And that made me realize that we just have to dive in. I stood on that beach that day and realized that I'd never actually done an ocean swim, but here I was about to compete in an ocean swim. And that's philosophically where the whole book stems from. It comes from just the ability to, um, you know, accept that you have strengths. Everybody has strengths. Everybody can do things correctly. And you, even if you make mistakes, so what? As the book says, just adjust your course and move on.
Hmm, definitely move on. What was the single most jarring lesson you learned in the real world that directly contradicted a core theory or model you were taught in a classroom?
Everything I learned in business contradicted what we learned in the classroom. And today I have to say that the subtitle of the book is Lessons Learned Since Business School. And I see business school graduates coming out of business school today. Then I did my MBA in the 80s, so something like 37 years ago. Um, I'm seeing that the models and the overthinking things. I think our new generation are being taught to overthink, to overanalyze, and part of that is because of social media, because of the fact that Google and now AI tools are right there. And we never had those 30 odd years ago. So you had to make decisions based on your own strengths. Today, everyone just, you know, I'm going to say makes decisions in weird ways, but they're not really making decisions. They're just overanalyzing until they're 100% sure. And you can never be 100% sure. You can only ever be 95% sure, and that's enough. In fact, 80% sure should be enough.
Definitely 95%. And Mr. Rael, business school often focuses on quantifiable data. What did you learn about the immeasurable human element like company culture, intuition, and leadership presence? That no
Well,
case study.
as a speaker today, I speak about leadership culture and strategy. And there is a famous quote from Jack Welch from General Electric. And Jack Welch said, "The soft stuff is the hard stuff." So, as a classically trained engineer, where I was taught to find the solution to every problem, and if you can't find the solution until you find the root cause, that's all changed. I now look at the soft stuff because the soft stuff, being leadership, culture, strategy, the people in the organization, is actually much harder to manage than the quantifiable data. Because, and I see companies come out with quantifiable data about engagement surveys and that kind of stuff, and they live and die by those. In Australia, one of my businesses is in financial services, and all the banks here in Australia rely on net promoter score assessments of their team members based on their interactions with people in the industry. And there's a problem there because I'm now getting calls from the people at the bank saying, "You're going to get a survey. Please make sure you either give me a one or a two, which is really bad, or a nine or a 10. Don't give me anything between six and eight because it doesn't count." And so, even though the banks are living and dying and paying these people their bonuses and everything else based on this net promoter score, the teams themselves are out there telling people how to fill in the net promoter score so the data becomes meaningless. And so the world is about those with empathy, those with intuitive understanding of people. That is what's going to make the future success, not necessarily the quantifiable data. I mean, obviously financial data. How is the business doing? Is it selling goods? Is it making a profit? Is it spending too much money? All that is quantifiable data. The problem is, though, that most corporations try and apply the quantifiable data to the human elements, the soft elements, as we call them. And I don't think that necessarily, I don't believe that you can necessarily apply those to the soft elements.
Can you share a specific vivid story of a personal failure or misjudgment that become a foundational lesson in the book and what it taught you about resilience?
Well, I mean, there are lots of examples in the book of things that we did. I mean, the classic one was when I started the financial services business in Australia. We went down the wrong road. We thought that the key to the business was having lots and lots of salespeople out there on the road. The problem is that that wasn't actually the core of the industry. The core of the industry, uh, and the way my business changed was when I actually employed admin staff in the back end. And the working title of the book was called Give Up Control to Gain Control, which is one of the chapters, chapter 3 of the book. Why? What does that mean? It means that as professionals, we actually have to accept at some point that we step back and we appoint our team members, and our team members are the ones who will actually do the admin. I talk about the $500 an hour revenue and the $10 an hour admin. The problem as entrepreneurs is we often get caught up in that $10 an hour admin when really we should be doing the $500 an hour revenue generation. And so that was the biggest mistake we made in our early days in the financial services business. We employed too many salespeople and no admin staff. And the business changed the day we employed our first admin person because it freed up the professionals to actually do what they do best, which is revenue generation. So that's one of the examples that I cite in the book about mistakes. The other one was I found a product. Um, I found a product which was a CD storage. Now, no one even knows what CDs are anymore, but it was a CD or DVD storage system. And I found this 20 years ago. It came out of Germany and was a very clever way of storing. And because of our document hungry and our data hungry environment, it provided a great way of storing your backups and your software and things like that. But I bought $40,000 worth of stock, and then I realized that I actually didn't have a retail network to sell it. And so I ended up giving away the stock to someone who was desperate for some work, and he managed to sell it for $5,000. So, there's lots of stories like that interwoven in the book about how I've made a decision, I've dived in, and then I've gone, okay, we have to change direction now.
Mr. Rail, how did your understanding of a leadership transform from conceptual frameworks of a school to a messy daily reality of motivating a team through uncertainty and pressure?
It's interesting. Even at business school, I already knew that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wasn't going to be a corporate leader. And so, because of that, I also took everything I learned at business school with a pinch of salt. All these leadership models, I just went, there must be a more practical way of doing things. And I look at the culture in my financial services group. So, that business has been around 25 years. It's done 3.5 billion Australian dollars in mortgages.
Mhm.
And yet, when I get visitors who come and visit our office, they're amazed by every Friday my team sit and have lunch together. In fact, it's now become almost every day, but on Fridays, I pay for lunch with my credit card. But on Fridays, we sit around and we talk, and we're not talking about business. People are sharing their own lives. There's banter. That is leadership in action. It's politically correct conversation, but it's not stunted conversation. I've always spoken about having an open door policy. My office door is now closed because I'm busy recording this interview with you, but
Mhm.
my office door is never closed. Like, it's always open. And so, um, you know, the truth of it is that there's million leadership models, but you really learn on the ground. You learn on the ground um, when you're on the ground and you have to actually deal with people, the stuff. That's where you learn. And so there was no one leadership model that influenced me. In fact, most of them I found far too theoretical.
Business schools emphasizes networking. How has your philosophy on building genuine professional relationships evolved since then, moving beyond transactional connections?
So it's an interesting question. Again, when I was at business school, it wasn't really about networking, although the network we built up was very strong through um, through just being who we were at business school. You know, you have a room full of A-type personalities. Networking per se has become an industry all of its own. You know, groups like BNI International, etc., really push the networking. Where I think they all fall down is that your network or your people in your network are not your customers. And everybody tries to sell to the people in their network. And if you just make a strategic mind shift that says the people in their networks are my customers. And so then instead of saying to you, Daniel, okay, listen, you know, this is what I do and this is what I can do for you, you change the narrative, and you change the narrative to say, hey, when you meet somebody or when you are talking to someone in your network, this is what I want you to tell them about me. So it's very, very explicit as a networking strategy. I don't believe that business schools actually have networking, and they may have today. I'm talking about my experience of 35 plus years ago. But from a networking perspective, it's about a mindset shift to saying, I'm not selling to the people in the room with me. I need to educate those people on what to say about me to their networks. And that's how we grow our businesses together.
Can you discuss a time you faced a complex ethical dilemma that was not a clear right or wrong case study? How did you navigate it, and what did it teach you about integrity in practice?
So, in my financial services business, I always insisted, and I made a decision early on that I was never going to employ ex bankers. So I didn't want people who had come out of the banking environment. I wanted people who generally were university graduates. So, in other words, they could think, and they could understand, and they could find the answers to what they needed. So let's just start with that as a basic. The situation in finance in Australia is that the banks pay a commission to all the brokers out there, and we're a brokerage. And in fact, in 2025, recently, the percentage of loans originated by brokers is almost 80%, 77 or 78% of all new business for banks comes from the broker channel. Now, for a number of years, there was no real standard, and banks and lenders paid different levels of commission. So many years ago, probably 20 years ago, a bank that we hadn't really dealt with came into my offices, and they wanted to talk to our staff about why we should be using them as a lender. Standard practice, every Tuesday we have another lender come in to talk to the team. But I met with the guy first and I said to him, by the way, tell me, what is your niche? Thinking that this person will tell me, you know, this is their niche. They can deal with this kind of customer or this kind of customer or this kind of property. And what was their property niche or their mortgage niche? And he said to me, oh, we pay the highest commission in the market. And I said, okay, well, then could you please leave? And he went, why? We pay the highest commission in the market. And I said, because if my staff are making a decision about their back line, their bottom line profit, in other words, how much commission are they going to earn, as opposed to putting the customer first, then we won't deal with you. And it took me 10 years to invite them back into the office when there was much more regulation around commissions and pretty much everyone was paying the same commissions. Only then would I let them back in because they had a product that was useful to our clients.
Mr. Rail, as a business excellence guy, as well as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Um, to help businesses transform in the short term and the long term. Short term, I want to be on as many stages as I can because that's what I do. I'm a speaker first, and author is part of that because it's my calling card. It is my credibility. But I'm a professional speaker, motivational speaker first, and so I want to sit down in 10 years' time and say, how many businesses have I transformed? How many people's lives have I transformed? And that list is already getting bigger and bigger. And I'm excited for the next 10 years because I think there's amazing opportunities for me to go around the world talking about optimism and optimistic change and how optimism will reframe the future and how leaders who embrace optimism as a strategic advantage and not just as a nice to have, but they see optimism as a strategic advantage and how I can contribute to helping them see that as a strategic advantage.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Roll, and looking forward for more success. And what will be a piece of advice for those people that want to be like you?
I think it is going back to the title of the book, Dive In. Don't be afraid to step off the edge. If you have done your homework to some degree, you know that you've got something to fall back on. And I'll use the example in Australia because that's where I'm based. Unemployment is at a very, very low level. And so for most people who go, I'm walking out of my corporate job, I'm going to go to 3 days a week and become an entrepreneur 2 days a week, take the opportunity. I see too many people getting old in the corporates and saying, I should have done this. I wish I had done this. Don't wish. Life is too short. My late father died in his 50s. I had two cardiac stents inserted into my chest when I was 49. Life is too short. Take the risk, the calculated risk, but take the risk and dive in because business is not complicated. Business is simple. Just dive in and adjust your course while you're moving.
Yes, people take the risk and dive in. That's the secret of being entrepreneur. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Rael. Mr. Rael, and can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Um, you know what? I read so much. I actually, it's very complicated. I mean, I think part of the one of the issues that you spoke about or you raised, and I think I'll raise Lindsay Adams's book, which is called The DNA of Business Networking, um, because he talks about some of the stuff that I spoke about today, which is the network of networks rather than the network. It's called the DNA of Business Networking, and it is about how you build a successful network in business. And I think that's been, one of the examples I use is I tell people on stage to take out their phone and look at how many contacts they have in their phone. And most people have between 500 and 1,000 contacts. I have 12,000 contacts in my phone. And I make the point that every one of those contacts is people you know already. And that is something I learned from Lindsay Adams, who wrote the book, The DNA of Business Networking. Um, it's about just being able to tap into the contacts that we forget we have to build this networking.
Mr. Riel, thank you so much for sharing your book as well as your knowledge to the world. What is the primary shift in mindset you hope a reader experiences from the first chapter to the last chapter of Dive In?
I think the mindset shift is one that says that business is not complicated, and I use that phrase a lot. But I think things like business schools, I think things like accounting firms overcomplicate business, make it too complicated. You know, people go, they're starting a business. Oh no, what accounting system do I need? And they take weeks deciding on the accounting system. Use an Excel spreadsheet for the first month. No one cares. But actually, unless you're getting out there and doing it and diving in, nothing's going to happen. And yes, in the speed of AI and technology development today, everybody wants to have a new app and the next app, but go back to basics. That's the mindset shift that I want to achieve. Go back to basics. What are the basic fundamental things that will make you successful and make your business successful, and stick to those?
Mr. Rael, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract poetry in second season. I'm a book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in third season. I'm a food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 in its fourth season. I'm a baby podcast law 101, mental health 101, and Bible verses 101 and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its second season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Rail, if you could travel back in time and have no coffee with your younger self on graduation day, what is one piece of advice from the book you would urgently consider to give to yourself?
I think it would be to be less arrogant and become coachable at a much earlier age. I I wasn't coachable until I was in my mid 50s. I was too arrogant and I thought I knew everything. And part of that is because we have access to so much information, everyone thinks I know everything. The advice I'd give my younger self is to become coachable, to listen more than we speak, because I spent most of my life speaking more than I listened, and I probably missed a lot of opportunities because of that. So that is the one bit of advice is in the book I talk about the fact that sometimes I mix up confidence, overconfidence, and arrogance. And I think arrogance is a horrible trait. I've exhibited it myself many times. And I think it is about being confident, not overconfident, and definitely not arrogant. And I think those traits will make people much more resilient, much more focused, and much nicer people to be around.
Mr. Rael Bricker, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
So absolutely, there's a free download of the book on my website. That's railbricker.com. But they can contact me, reach out for business advice, for strategic advice, for mentoring, and all those other things through railbricker.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram.
Yes, people support Mr. Rael Bricker because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come, more and more empowering business will rise to come. So, Mr. Rael, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for your time.
More to come, people. See you soon.